Hey everybody, just a little late signing in there, but I guess it's still 3 p.m. So welcome to the Backyard Carrying Wealth Tool Library live stream on Wednesdays. All about gardening stuff, kitchen stuff, plant stuff, anything you guys suggest in this kind of realm. I'll talk about it eventually. Just a reminder, while the camera's still facing me, next week the topic will be designing, planning your garden. Like, where do you even start? What kind of space do you need based on the yard you have? What things work really well here in Guelph? What things work really well if you have predators such as squirrels, chipmunks, neighborhood cats, things like that. Yeah, just kind of a basic, like, how do I plan out my first vegetable garden? And that will kind of lead into starting seedlings, which is just around the corner. Some things could even be started now. Certain cut flowers are started now. And I'll be starting my hot peppers as soon as I get some more seeds that I ordered recently. And I'll be sure to share that with you guys and how I do that. We're going to be doing a little bit of seed starting today. I got a couple little demos. I think it's going to be exciting, a little bit exciting. Kind of like when you actually get to do a little experiment in science class at school. So yeah, we're going to do a little bit of science when it comes to microgreens, sprouts, and how to start indoor lettuce. I have a vacuum thing that's going off. I'm going to have to turn it off. It's being a little loud. It's not appreciated. You probably can't hear it, but hopefully it's done. Okay, so where we're going to start off. I think a lot of people have a big question about... Okay, hold on, I gotta turn it off. It's going. All right, back to where we were. I think a lot of people want to know the difference between what is a microgreen and versus a sprout. A microgreen versus a sprout both involve the seeds, and I'm going to make the sprouts first, and maybe you'll understand better. So, yeah. I have some actual microgreen / sprouting seed that I got from like a 50% off package at the grocery store. It was a pretty good deal. I've got some basil, and there's actually quite a bit in here. It says it's about 6.5 grams each package. And yeah, so it's quite full compared to what you would maybe get for starting your own plants. These seeds are probably specifically engineered for this purpose. So yeah, sprouts, you don't need any kind of growing medium. What you need is either a little tray or a jar. So find yourself a jar like this. Any mason jar is great. Glass is great because you can stick it in the dishwasher and get it fully sanitized. You'll want maybe like some alcohol or something. These microgreen seeds actually came with alcohol swabs of their own, which is kind of interesting, and I will use these because I need to use them on my little microgreen trays, but this is just for demo purposes. You want to make sure that you're either using a little bit of bleach or, really getting these clean, because you don't want any kind of bacteria, mold, other plant material on here that's going to affect the safety of your jars and things like that. So, and the microgreens growing within it, the sprouts growing within it, you don't want mold. You're going to be eating this, so yeah. I was planning on pouring the water here. My sink is pretty far, but yeah, so basically you need a jar, and then you need to hang on to jar lids like this. You can get ones like pre-made for sprouting, but you really don't need it. You just need one like this, and I see someone has a request to join, but I don't know you, so maybe next time send me a message and we can link up for the next video. But yeah, you definitely want to hold on to these, as they come perfectly in handy for doing sprouts. So make sure that it fits your jar. And what I have today, and it's highly recommended, I actually have some leftover screen from when I fixed a small window. So as you can kind of see, this is just like window screening. I've thoroughly cleaned this with super hot water and a little bit of bleach, making sure that this is super clean too, because the seeds will be coming in contact with this. This is kind of big for this, but you know what, then I can use it with a larger jar, etc. So what you're gonna do, and this is basically all you need to start some sprouts, is this. So you're gonna lay it flat over the top, and you're gonna have it like that. once you have this kind of supplies, then you need to look for some seeds. And I know that you can get sprouting seeds from the natural grocery stores here in town. You can order them online. The Big A company online sells them for a pretty good deal, but if you don't want to support something like that, a lot of, see if I can bring it up. A lot of seed companies, I got my Johnny's catalog in the mail today, kind of late in the game, considering I already got an email from them, but they actually have a microgreens section, which might be handy seeing as I don't have any actual microgreens to show you. But yeah, there we go. A lot of these seed companies actually stock their own microgreens that not only if you wanted to start a small business, but it's just a home grower, you could actually buy in smaller quantities and then save those seeds, mix them together to make really fun mixes. Here's some pictures of the mixes they have, like a little mix of radish, kale, various different kinds, different kales, produce different colored microgreens. They have a lovely little illustration here that kind of shows you what each microgreen looks like. And that's where the big difference comes in. A sprout is that process before the actual seed sprouts the first true leaves. The first true leaves look a lot like what it end up looking like. So kale, if you have a frilly kale, you'll actually see little purple frilly leaves. And we call those like the first set of leaves, and then the secondaries and the tertiary set of leaves. And that's when it really becomes a seedling. So very quickly turns from sprout to microgreen, essentially seedling, to true seedling. So for sprouts, I'm gonna demo with, I think we'll make basil sprouts. I think that would be kind of yummier situation. But basically in here, you're not providing any kind of soil or nutrients. This is just a vessel to get them wet, keep them wet in, and get some air. And I'll show you what that looks like. So yeah, I'm gonna open up these seeds. Sometimes it's good to give a rinse because there might be like chaff, which is leftover seed material that will never sprout, broken seeds, things like that. That's just dry. They actually look really good. There's not a lot of like waste. It's kind of hard to show you guys, but just a dark situation. But I'm gonna fill this up. I think I would probably put more seeds than this if I was doing a big batch of sprouts, but you do have to make sure there's room for when they actually sprout and get larger. So, you know, given your jar, I would not put more than a quarter of the jar full of seeds because it's going to expand. Depending on the variety, that might not even be enough. Larger seeds like chickpeas, mung beans get quite large, so you need to kind of do the math and make sure you have enough room in your jar. But usually you don't want to go over half, you definitely don't want to go over a quarter, and it's okay to have space because we need that space to wash these out every day, or twice a day. So you pop them in the jar like that. Looks pretty good, nothing else crazy in there. You don't want to start doing this, then you end up with like a dog hair and you're going to eat that later on. I'm going to put my mesh on top of the jar, or you could do multiple jars, just depends. I'm going to secure that lid. I'm not securing it obviously to be watertight. We just don't want any seeds to get trapped up in the edge or anything like that. I think this mesh is just fine enough that they're not going to drop out. A couple of them dropped out. That's okay. We will put them elsewhere for now. Maybe I'll put them back in. So I have to be a little bit careful, but they won't as easily come out when they're wet and they've soaked up a little bit. So yeah, I'm going to skip a step because we don't have time in this video, but basically you have your jar. We're going to put some water in it first to kind of just cover them up and let them soak for, I want to say like no more than 6 hours, or maybe no more than 12 hours. You don't want to let them soak too much. Let's pretend that time has passed, but we're just kind of giving them a light little stir, making sure every seed has gotten soaked. We come back 6 hours later. We're going to drain it. I've got a bowl to drain. Hopefully not too many come out. And what you're going to do is either on the corner of your sink or propped up like this, you are going to balance this jar with your wet seed. Make sure they're all kind of down there. At first, it's going to be kind of clumpy and weird, but eventually when they actually sprout, it only takes about 2 days to get this going, maybe 3 maximum. After that initial 6-hour soak, and then rinse, well, you're going to drain, and then give them another rinse, and then drain again. You're going to wait and see what happens, and then every morning, add a little bit of water, and repeat this process. Give them a little gentle swig. As soon as you start to see any kind of sprouting evidence, you do not want to shake this like a milkshake or like a protein shake or anything violent, because you'll damage the sprouts. But we just do a little bit, then we drain it. Like this. And then you're gonna let that balance by your sink, or maybe over a little something where those drips can come out safely. And you're gonna make sure that they're kind of spread out like that, not in a huge clump, and you wait. And then, yeah, so every morning keep doing this. And then in about 2 to 3 days, maximum, you're gonna have sprouts ready to use. The actual shells of these seeds will come off, and then you'll have basically little tiny sprouts with just the initial leaves, and that's when they're ready to eat. If you keep them clean and rinsed like this, once they get started, you can pop them in the fridge. That will slow everything down in terms of growing. Give them a final rinse, pop them in the fridge, and then use them up within a couple of days. They don't quite work the same as like grocery store sprouts, because those ones must go through an interesting rinsing process and they can last a little bit longer. But I would definitely, people who do a lot of sprouting usually start fresh sprouts every couple of days, just so they have a nice supply, and you kind of get to understand the amount of sprouts you want to use. If you've got a recipe coming up, or a sandwich that you like, or a bagel that you really like alfalfa sprouts on, stuff like that, you start them every week. So that is sprouts. Microgreens is kind of the next level in terms of getting more out of the seeds. You're getting a lot of nutrients in, obviously, the sprout, but the microgreen is believed to have a little bit more, because you're allowing a little bit more leaf matter to come out. So it's like a very tiny salad situation, but it's all compact into that very small plant. So what you're gonna need for microgreens is any kind of clear tray. At least the top should be clear, to allow light in eventually. I have these are the ones I was talking about, by a company called You Grow, that I got 50% off at the grocery store a couple weeks ago. And they basically give you this little tray, which is very reminiscent of any of like the lettuce containers. You could use a lettuce container, they're just very big. Any kind of reusable container. Something that I thought would work if you had this at home and you didn't want to buy a kit, which I don't think is necessary. It just so happened this was super cheap. But I have this old Ferrero Rocher that I used to put eggs in. And if we take it apart, take that package out and then flip it over, I'll put it back together like this. This could also work as a pretty good little vessel for some microgreens. So yeah, all you really need is then the same seeds that you would use to sprout. You can, of course, like I showed you in this Johnny's, this is not a plug for Johnny's, I just so happen to have it, but they have microgreens in their catalog. They have a huge selection of colors, flavor profiles, the amount of time it takes to actually sprout, things like that. They're usually all around the same. But if you want a really nice mix, like something like amaranth here at the top is like bright pink. You've got radishes, different mustards, different flavorings that would bring a different culinary flavor to what you want to use it for. Mixes are great because if you can't decide, they also have some sprouts in here too. So you can kind of see the visual difference of the sprout kind of being a little squiggly, not connected to anything. The seed chaff is still attached, and it's more of like this salady product, crunchy product that's really good in like various types of salads, on sandwiches. It just really depends. Shoots are a little different. It's kind of like a microgreen, but even further. You're just cutting the young plant, which they also have in this section. And then we go right into the greens, which is really fun. But yeah, back to microgreens. You can see the difference between them and the sprouts is that we've got those initial, hopefully you can hear me, the initial first leaves that come out, the primary leaves, and then boom, that second set comes out, the secondary leaves, and you've got a microgreen. The plant will then become a little bit starved for nutrients beyond that, the more leaves it wants to actually put out. So It's really important that you harvest them in the proper window as well, so that you're not ending up wasting all that product, because you probably don't have enough room for 200 kale plants. So you got to keep an eye on them and what they look like. And once those secondary leaves come out, you're ready to harvest. So the way that this system works with this pre-bought is you need some kind of medium, something for the microgreens to hold on to and then grow up. Instead of soil, soil has a lot of potential bacteria, insects, mold, things like that. And because we're dealing with a ton of seeds all compacted together with not a lot of airflow, we want something that is absolutely neutral, clean, doesn't have any nutrients in it. We don't need the plants to go crazy big. They just need to do that initial sprout and grow, and then they're good to go. So something like this is like an eco, like recycled core mat product. You can get them made of all sorts of things. You can get them in really large rolls, and you can cut them custom to size. I have some scissors here, so if I wanted, it actually would fit perfectly fine in this Ferrero Rocher, but there's actually a bit of room at the end. It's designed to go in this little tray like this, and it's kind of like reminds me of like an eco-friendly scoring mat. There's so many different types of things you can use. The great thing about any kind of natural product like this is that it's completely compostable after you're done with it. You can also use like a mesh kind of tray, and then you have to get rid of that root material. You can see in here like the roots from the last start are kind of all over the place, kind of residual, because they're that crazy strong. They've kind of just etched their way into the plastic, but that's okay. We've got our alcohol pad. So yeah, just kind of like the sprouts, you want to make sure that you've got a completely clean and sanitary. The biggest thing is just you don't want to avoid like mold that is going to just kill your seedlings immediately. And that the same goes for seed starting. If you have little pots and trays that you want to reuse from last year, it's really important to do kind of a hot water soak with a little bit of bleach, just to make sure. Now that's kind of dirty in here. I thought I had cleaned this, but clearly not. But it's a good thing we use that. It smells like greens in here. So yeah, you can get these in big rolls. You cut it to the size that you want to do. Professional growers, you can get them pre-made in big sizes that are the same size as like your standard seedling starting tray. It's really straightforward. You just cut it to size, pop it in like that. I've got my little water. We're gonna water it and let it soak up. What I learned from the last time is that I put enough water in here, and then I kind of, with my hands, like push it down. I don't know if that works. It's kind of a weird angle, sorry. My tripod is like a flexi gorilla tripod, so sometimes if I push it too hard, it's in like the weirdest place. But yeah, so I'm gonna push that down. You can already see it's kind of soaking up like a little gross towel. There's too much water in here, but I kind of did that on purpose. I might even flip it over just to get this going faster, but it's gotten a darker color. We're all soaked up. I've got that extra water. I'm gonna drain that excess water because we really don't need it just yet. And it's good to pre-moisten this before you put the seeds in, because the water itself will kind of act as something sticky for those seeds. So I'm gonna use kale on this one. Now, this is probably a quarter the size of like your standard seedling mat, and they gave me 6.5 grams of seed, and you'll see how well this actually covers up this amount of space. So I don't know the ratio of space, but there probably is a calculation out there. Yeah, let's see. The water is helping that it's moist because these are just kind of sticking. We want to make sure it's evenly spread apart like sprinkles on a cake. We don't want too many in the edges because they will grow in place. And then they will all be squished at one zone and then probably not have enough room to actually do their thing. These are all recyclable little weird plastic type packages, kind of interesting. But yeah, so now we're in here, we're kind of even. Nothing's too crazy. I might spread them out a little bit. And then I'm gently putting my hand on top as not to disperse the seeds. I'm going to put a little water on my hand. And it did disperse the seeds, so I got to fix that. Probably a little bit heavy on the water even now, but it'll soak up. putting my seeds kind of back in order here. And what you're going to do, once you've watered them, your medium is wet, so the difference is quite a lot between the dry and the wet one. I might even drain some more of this water. I don't want to lose any seeds. Now, in terms of seed selection, you do not want to just buy any old garden seeds from like Canadian Tire stand or whatever, like store-bought seeds that are meant to be grown in soil, because a lot of seeds that are meant to be grown in soil have coatings and different cleaners that have been put, even if they say they're organic or maybe they're not organic. They put different cleaners and things on top of the seeds so that you have a better chance of sprouting them, but it's not necessarily a good thing for you to ingest. So just make sure that you know where your seed source is. There's a lot of local people who sell microgreen seed that they've grown themselves. You could consider growing microgreen seeds yourselves. Some really good candidates, if you can get kale to flower and reflower and you can save those seeds, you get a lot of seed. You get a ton of seed. I did spill some water on my table, but that's just normal around here. Trying to put everybody back in place. They're all sticking to me. But yeah, you can save your own seed, but usually sprouting seed is going to be a little bit cheaper than buying packaged regular garden seeds that are meant to be grown for the plant. You want to, not this, it shouldn't cost a ton of money to do this. It should be pretty reasonable. So now that I have the tray with the seeds kind of dispersed, I don't want to send them around too much. We've got some water in there. There's a lid that corresponds. I'm going to pop that on, and the recommendation is that until you actually start to see a little bit of yellow sprouting or that initial white sprout that comes out, you're going to keep this in like a dark place, maybe not fully dark, but out of the direct sun, actually. So you pop that, up into, I have a little spot up in my cupboard that doesn't get a lot of light, but I can still see what's going on. You don't want to put it out of sight and then forget about it. You cannot put it in your fridge. It's too cold for them to actually germinate. You could put this on a heat mat. Some grow lights produce enough light that you wouldn't need that, but I'm going to put mine in kind of a semi-dark place that I can kind of check in on. It only takes about a day. I don't know why I paused. It only takes about a day or two for these to actually appear as little sprouts. And once they've done that, you can then move it into a sunny location. A really good spot is a windowsill, under a grow light. I did both last time. I did a little experiment when I did them, and it didn't really make too much of a difference between the window, except they kind of leaned towards the window, and the grow light. They grew about the same height in the same amount of time. Eventually, when they sprout and you'll start to see this green come up, you need to check the directions or look into that actual microgreen, because some of them have different harvest times and looks that they should have. I know with the basil, it's very small and you think, oh, you're going to get a little bit more out of it, but you're actually not. So after about a week to 10 days, they're fully grown. You can actually peel this out of here and you'll have this little mat of seedlings, and you can take some sharp little scissors and trim this down like your own little, Farmville, or what, I don't know if people still play that, but like, your own little patch of land. You can do your little harvest, put this on a salad. Basil sprouts are good on like pizza, stuff like that. Really good. And then this can go right into the composter. I like to chuck mine out for the chickens. They eat whatever is left over, and then I find it again and put it in the composter. So that would be microgreens. So next week we'll check in on these. The video that I put up with the post about this workshop has like a slow-mo video of when they were a little bit older, some microgreens I made last time that I did them. And they grow really fast, and it's kind of cool. If you leave them too long, they start to require a lot of water and then nutrients, and you can actually completely damage your microgreens by pouring too much aggressive water on top of them. It kind of like, they're too leggy, they're too delicate for that, and they kind of just fall over. So when you add water, try to go for the corners and be really delicate. You'll probably need to add water every 2 days. And once they start to take off, maybe twice a day. And that's when you know it's almost time to harvest. So it's kind of an experiment. It's always really fun to try, and you'll kind of get used to the way your house works. I know that if you have an older house, it's a little bit cooler. Maybe you have a really great window. Everyone's experience is going to be a little bit different. If you have questions about it, message at the Guelph Tool Library at any of these posts, and I'll try to give you a hand if you're trying this out. So yeah, that's microgreens and our sprouts. So these are started, and we're going to check in on these next week when we talk about garden planning. And just before we go, I am going to start some lettuce seeds, and I've been wanting to do this for a while, even though it's already February. I can't believe it. I've been wanting to do some indoor lettuce because I do end up using, like, I really like to have like lettuce tacos and like add like really nice slices of lettuce to my sandwiches. And I thought, wow, that living lettuce at the grocery store. Any recommendations on where to buy seeds? So I know that at the Stone Store, downtown Guelph, sells a brand of microgreen seeds. There are certain things that you can sprout from the bulk store, but like I said, again, just make sure that you give them a good rinse. Make sure they're nice and clean. Any bigger seed company, West Coast Seeds, Johnny's, they have microgreen seeds available. If you're definitely into like the culinary side of this and not just like to try it out, the nutrient side, I definitely recommend trying out this is not a Canadian brand, but there's a couple like High Mowing, West Coast Seeds that have microgreens available, and I definitely recommend ordering from there. You can get a lot at once. I've seen them on Amazon. I've seen the same brand sold, around town on Amazon. You can get a whole bunch of variety to try out. So I would just take a Google at microgreen seeds and see. There's a brand, I think it's called Mother's. It comes in a green package. Those are always really reliable. They've been doing it since, I believe, like the 80s, 70s or the 80s. They've been doing microgreens, so they know what they're doing. But otherwise, I've gotten some from West Coast Seeds, and they were really nice. I got like a red mix, and it was really fun and like violently red purple color, so it was kind of neat to like add to your little dishes and things like that. So if you're already going to make an order for some seeds, you might want to check out the seed company that you're interested in and see if they have microgreen seeds as well. On the other hand here, my lettuce seeds came from one of my favorite companies, Wild Garden Seeds in Oregon. They just have some really unique lettuces, different colors that you just don't see at the grocery store. And for me, growing your own food is all about stuff that you can't find usually. So, unusual things. I've still got some water left in here. I've got a clean yogurt container. The reason I'm going to use this, they're like perfectly fused together here. I've got an old pot that I'm going to reuse for this purpose. I've got a yogurt container that is going to kind of act as not only the catch-all of the water that's going to be coming in here, but also to give it a little bit of elevation, because the grow light I'm going to be putting it under for now is a little high up, and I don't want to adjust it, so I figured why don't we just meet it halfway. So this container has been cleaned. It still has the old label on it, but it's been cleaned. It's ready to go. I've got some fresh, just regular seedling mix in here. Seedling mix generally has a pretty low nutrient content. We don't want anything crazy. This is going to be indoors, so we don't want a lot of mold to grow. We want to make sure it's nice and clean. There isn't any added fertilizer in here just yet. That's something that's going to come later on. The reason I'm going to start my lettuce like this and not just in individual little pots is because I'm going to be selecting from the sprouts that come out of this, my top candidates, and then spreading them out from there into larger containers. It's a little bit time consuming, but because I'm doing this kind of tiny indoor farming for my own weekly grocery needs, I don't need a lot of it, and so I can make some choices of the healthiest seedlings from here. So I'm just going to stack them like that, and then when I water it, there's about this much space that water can actually catch. I'm going to do a little light watering before I actually add seeds to this, which is always a good idea, especially of really tiny seeds, because you putting water in after you've planted them could completely shift them around in the container. So I've added a little bit of water to moisten this up. I'm going to let that soak. I can hear it draining at the bottom, so it's pretty good drainage of soil. With my finger, I'm going to make 3 holes, kind of equidistant in here, but with lettuce seeds, with anything very small, you don't need to go very deep. I'm just making 3 little wells so I can kind of distinguish them apart. Typical move, just wipe off that mud onto my pants like, you know, any garden person knows, it's a dirty job. I've got a couple little tiny seeds in here. I'm not going to use too many, putting them in my hand beforehand. And the point of this too is I can start quite a few in here and then using like a toothpick to kind of excavate and take them out gently and then move them into a larger container when they get a little bigger. So there's my little lettuce seeds. I'm probably not going to use all of these. I'm going to put maybe 5 or 6 in each one of those little wells only. Just kind of like that. We really don't even need that many because each lettuce could be larger than this container easily. I'm keeping that in mind. So if I started 20 of them, it's kind of unnecessary. It actually just exploded everywhere, so that's great. Yeah, I'm going to put back this excess. Very valuable seeds. We don't want to lose them. So there we go. Like that. And then being really gentle, again, lettuce seeds don't really have to be too far off the surface. I'm just going to cover those up a little bit. And it's pretty moist in there, but I will add just a trickle since we have a little water left of where I planted them. Like that. My rabbit's getting frustrated with her food bowl for some reason this week, and she's banging it around. So there, that's kind of my little tower for now. They're planted. We probably check in with these as well next week. Making sure that a lot of indoor things I find this time of year, if you have your, especially if it's been really cold and you have your furnace really going, it can be really dry inside. So you have to make sure that you're watering everything, even though it's winter time and things are going kind of slow. Anything you have indoors is going to suck up any of that moisture that's not really in the air anyways. So make sure you're checking on your plants a little bit more than usual when it's winter like this and it's pretty dry in the house. I know that I'm waking up with a dry nose, a dry throat, so I know that my plants might be feeling similar things. So yeah, thanks for joining in this live stream, keeping it kind of short today at 30 minutes. But there goes microgreens. We'll check on these next week. Sprouts, I'll probably give an update on these on the tool library story or something like that in the next couple of days because this will go kind of fast. Take some pictures. And then my lettuce seedlings that I've started like that. We'll prick these out next week if they're big enough. And I'll show you exactly how to do that. So yeah, next week, garden planning, how to do it. You know, what do you need to get started? How do you even know where to start? How do I design it? How do I know what materials I need? Stuff like that. Answering all of your questions about how to actually design and plan your garden, because designing and planning before you get started is a great way to save money and lose less plants over the season and get the most out of your energy and your time and your resources put into your little garden. So yeah. Thanks for joining me. I'm Meredith from Backyard Caring on the Wolf Tool Library Instagram Live today, and I'll see you next Wednesday. Bye.